Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. I'll do a special selection today, and this one is going to be interesting, I think, just given based off of what I've been told about it. Today's comes at us from Prog He says, choosing a song by the Swedish composer and multi-instrumentalist Simon Steensland. I decided to go with a collaboration with the Australian composer musician J.G. Thirlwell and the song Catholic Deceit off of the album Oscillospira. When the time has come, be prepared for great orchestral usage. Also, although Steensland is a multi-instrumentalist who started off playing drums, there's a reason why he, like here in this song, usually hires his friend drummer extravaganza Morgan Agren to do the drumming. And that is a reference to Morgan of Matson Morgan, who we checked out a while ago. He was the drummer in that group. So, all right, let's dig into this. Let's see what's going on. We got some orchestral stuff going on. We got Morgan on drums. Let's go. Very interesting atmosphere they're making here. Yeah. Yeah, very cool bass line there. Playing around a lot with accenting off beats. That is such a bad sound, too. Oh. So I feel like we're in 3/4 right now. It's a slow 3/4. Yeah, very cool contrast. We have some of the brighter stuff in the glockenspiel. In the xylophone. But a lot of really dark heaviness with the electric guitar. I'm really curious where this is going though. great use of contrast, actually having some really quiet sections, low volume quiet sections, I suppose I could say. That door opening in the background. A lot of really fun timbres, really encapsulating a wide gamut of instruments and sounds. It's very menacing. And it has a march idea with it as well in the snare, and I have ideas about what that might represent. Really playing around with rhythmic ideas between various timbres, creating some rhythmic layers. I almost want to say there's some polymeter going on as well. The brass in particular don't seem to be lining up their repetitions the same time everybody else is. Maybe not. Maybe everybody is in 4/4. The brass just has a really long passage. I really love how the woodwinds are making things very unsettling here against the aggression in the rest of the band. They're accenting odd beats. In fact, the whole band is just taking up the woodwind section. very disjointed, introducing a lot of chaos here. Ooh, nice. Nice little modulation. Oh. Yeah, that was pretty good. So yeah, some really interesting ideas in there, all over the place. Um, Man, where do I even start? So a lot of the song is based on subversion of. I don't even know what we're subverting. Every section is introduced. Almost every section is introduced with something rather simple. Um, and actually, in most cases, pleasant-ish. That changes as the song progresses. Some of the later elements do come in with, they are introduced with less pleasant elements, but for the most part, the sections are introduced with something that sounds good or pretty, even if it isn't perfect. The beginning of the song sounds a bit like a warm up. There's some parts that seem to be free time. There's some parts that don't really seem to click as well. But for the most part, after that, every section is introduced with something that has some beauty to it in the atmosphere. For instance, the one that's most recent in my mind is that final section. We come in with the xylophone with that eighth note run. And then the violin is added on top of that, and we get that nice harmony there. I actually don't remember if they were playing the same note or if they were harmonizing. But anyways, we at least get the textural harmony there, and it sounds nice. There's nothing odd about it. There's nothing out of place. There's not any strong elements of dissonance. It is not a full piece of writing yet. I mean, I suppose it could be if that's what you wanted, just two instruments playing the same thing. That is music after all. But it's still a beautiful foundation, so to speak. It's not offensive, I would say, to most people. And then we slowly add more and more elements onto it until we've reached the conclusion of, this section, everything tied together, and it is not that pristine element that we had seen to begin with. We have been duped. We have been subverted. This concept of writing something simple and nice and making it into something very dark, menacing. Uh, in one case, there's a lot of tension and almost it's filled with terror, almost some fear elements to the writing. Each section embraces a different style of atmosphere in its darker element. Once all the instruments have been brought in, all four of these sections, I think, embrace a different element, a different atmosphere, a different emotion that can be tied to the negative element. So I think, just on a basis, I think that's pretty cool. It's like taking a painting of something that's not, it's one thing, and then you change it to something completely different. Oh, what's tattoos? When you get your tattoo covered up or redone or whatever the term is, and they take something you didn't like and turn it into something you do like. It's that idea. They're taking one concept and evolving it into something that's completely opposite, even though that foundation is still the same. And I think that's really cool. It might be a bit overdone as a piece of music, doing it four times in a row. But at the same time, I think it works. There wasn't any point that I was completely or that I was reaching an area of disengagement due to seeing this pattern, of seeing the repetition in this core concept of how the song is composed. But what I think is more interesting is that we have this concept of showing you one thing and saying, no, actually, it's this other thing. We could say that the composition is being deceitful. Wait a second, what's the name of this song? Catholic Deceit. Oh, that word's baked right into the title. Funny that, huh? I don't think that it is any accident that the song presents these inoffensive ideas as the beginning, but when we actually see what's underneath the surface, when we add all the pieces together and look at the picture as a whole rather than just what's portrayed at the beginning, we get this darker aspect to it. I 100% believe that that's the thesis of this song. Hey, look at this thing that on the surface is, pristine and perfect. Oh, wait, we move a couple of floorboards and look what's underneath. There's all this darkness and anger, and, fear. And, we're going to get to this part, but the marching drums, what does that represent in this idea? At least to me, the thesis of the song is being worn right on the song's hypothetical sleeve, metaphorical sleeve. I don't think they've gone any way out of their way to disguise what the song is about, and what it is saying. It's pretty clear to me, and I like how they go about doing it. I almost want to say that thematically, this element of wiping the slate clean and presenting the pristine image again kind of lines up. I mean, I don't want to get too political about this. I'm just going to present facts. How often does something happen in the in the Catholic Church that breaks news? Like every news publication is covering it, and then it just sort of gets swept under the rug, and the public image is pristine again, and then the cycle happens again and again. So I kind of like this idea of having this element of pristine playing, cover it up and showcase all of this ugliness with it, wipe it clean and start over and do it all over again. I think it works well with this concept. And I think time of release is definitely going to impact this. This says it was released on April of 2020. The recording company, I don't know. maybe a label. I don't know if it'd be a label though. Anyways, they also say that it's 2020. So I'm gonna guess this is 2020, in which case I could see these concepts being created today. Because at least even in my lifetime, in my adult lifetime, when I've actually been paying attention to stuff like this, I have seen the cycle. So it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know how old Simon Steensland or J.G. Thirlwell are, but assuming they're at least my age or older, I'm sure they've seen this cycle and they wanted to make a song that represented this concept. And I think in that idea, they nailed it 100%. And then, like I said, they didn't even try to hide it. They called it Catholic Deceit, and at least to me, first time listen, I picked up the thesis immediately. I picked up the idea of the song, the theme of the song, and yeah, they just did a fantastic job with that. A little on the nose, but sometimes you got to be blunt about it. Now, musically, I think there's some really cool things in here. There's a lot of really interesting rhythmic ideas. A majority of this song takes place within 4/4 or 3/4, possibly a 6/8, but the way that I count and feel it, it's closer to 3, but it is a very slow 3. But it's also, at least to me, it sounds more of an orchestral element, and having slower tempos, it happens. I've played pieces with slower tempos, and I'll tell you, counting rest, you got 8 bars of rest, and you're counting 1, 2, 3. I mean, it feels like forever. But I would say that slower tempos are more prevalent in orchestral settings, classical style music, more so than rock or pop or metal. And I think that's why I typically feel a 6/8 when we're entering into more of a 3 or 6 feel when we're looking at popular music. But here, I feel more of a 3, even despite the slower tempo. And I think part of that is just because of the setting, the instruments around. I don't know, I just have that kind of association. Like slower tempos and popular music just don't go together, if at least to me. I typically end up feeling subdivisions, quicker subdivisions rather than the slower true pulse. So yeah, we have 3/4, we have 4/4. I think that's it. And despite that, we have a ton of really interesting rhythmic sections which feel like they are in not one of those. Even pushing to the point that in the 4th segment, maybe it was the 3rd segment, I even stated, I think there's some polymeter going on here. And I think by the end of it, I concluded there wasn't. It wasn't 4/4, but it was just the way that these rhythms are being played around with, the way that different instruments and melodic lines are emphasizing specific beats, which provide a specific pulse or a specific feel to the rhythms, and the way that that plays in with and against the time signature that's sort of established by some of the other instruments. There's some really cool things going on in here regarding rhythms. I think the most extreme, again, the ending, I think, is just going to be the most extreme. I think I'm going to pull so many examples from this. The ending had a ton of wild rhythmic elements overlapping each other and creating this very disjointed feeling. A lot of the song's fairly disjointed and chaotic once we've put everything together. But I think that final section, to me, would be a prime example of layering a lot of different rhythmic pulses together and creating something that just feels very rhythmically disoriented. But again, that ending is not the only place. It happens all throughout the song. These two people, these two composers, JG and Simon, they're very keen on making things feel disjointed in this song. And of course, rhythm is not the only place that we do that in. There's also some dissonance that appears musically, harmonically throughout the song as well. A lot of really high tension in chord relationships, note relationships, and creating tension and energy and contrast through these ideas of very tense note relationships. And then, of course, the final way that they introduced uh, disjointedness within the structure of the song itself is just allowing all these instruments to exist. I would say that in any given situation, when we've reached the peak layering, there's probably about 20-25% of the lines that are, I would say it's pushing too much. Like they hit 100% as far as how much space they had for notes to fit in and how much space in the mix they had. And then they continued to stack on top of that, creating instances of instruments, metaphorically stepping on each other's toes, two notes that probably should not have been played together that do get played together, an instrument that had, sort of the mix focus for their line, and another one steps in and takes it, like a beat or, a bar early, so that the first one didn't get to finish their phrasing, and just all these elements where things aren't lining up properly because there's realistically not enough space for all of these instruments to be occupying the roles that they're occupying or the space in the mix that they're occupying, and it creates this element of chaos, which again I think it goes along with this idea of disjointedness and unpleasantness that contrasts against that pleasant beginning of every section. It's done in a fantastic way. It really is. And the other thing is just how interesting all of these movements, sections end up becoming. I feel like I never had enough time to appreciate what was going on in them. By the time that I was finally getting around to hearing everything and getting a nice overview, we were already moving on to the next section. And I kind of wish all of them would last just a little bit longer, but that's also just from a first listen, really trying to analyze some of this highly layered, dense playing. I'm sure maybe on a subsequent listen, I'll better appreciate the length because it is the proper length that's needed to tell the story, and I don't need the extra time to analyze what's going on. Let's see. Oh, song structure. So I mentioned that the ups and downs, moving, taking something simple, adding a bunch of stuff to it, coming back down, it fits thematically with what I think the song is about. But I also think it provides a nice roller coaster for the song. You have these constant rising and falling elements, and they are rising and falling in simultaneously dynamic elements. We have volume dynamics, we have width dynamics, we have tension dynamics and chaos dynamics. It isn't just that these sections are getting more layered and then less layered, or louder and quieter, or more dissonant and less dissonant. It's that they're all happening together, really amplifying just how far up it feels like we're coming and how far down we're going back from that, how much progress we've lost or how much movement we've made between these sections. And I don't know if this part was intentional, and I could just be reading into it, but it works so well because we're talking about, these wide elements just constantly adding onto these sections and increasing the tension, increasing, all this stuff, and then bringing it back down. And it makes that drop back down to, sometimes pure silence. It's a bar or two before we introduce the first instrument for the next section. It makes it feel so quiet, so sparse, so thin, so compressed in some areas. The contrast, because we're using several styles of dynamic simultaneously, the contrast feels larger, especially coming back down because it's done so quickly. Going up is a constant layering effect, so it's more gradual. But to reduce everything at the same time and bring almost, well, in some cases, all three elements back down to zero again, it really, at least to me, it hits harder. because of, I guess, some sort of multiplicative effect, maybe just an additive effect, having all of these dynamics being done in tandem simultaneously really adds, at least to me, to the contrasting nature of the two. And then I just want to give a shout out here at the end to the drumming by Morgan in the final section there. It was mind blowing. Uh, Not technical on a rhythmic sense, like some of the other drummers we've seen, but just technical on raw understanding of an instrument. He played pretty much straight eighth notes, straight 16th notes. I don't remember what our tempo was at the time, but it's just a constant flurry of attacks, rigid. The amount of space between all of them was the same, but just the amount of sounds that he could get out of his kit, and when he decided to use the same sound repeatedly, or when he decided to just hit it once and move off to another instrument, the phrasing of that final solo is what blew me away. It has so many interesting elements about it. Uh, Sometimes he's utilizing a bit of anger or rage. Sometimes there's a levity to it. There are a few times that he just decided to, sit on a cymbal and hit it like 3 or 4 times before moving off to something a little bit more aggressive. And it's just, why? But I think the why is the cool part. I don't think, usually I'm like, hey, if anybody knows, maybe he's done an interview, I want to check that out. But here, I don't think I want to know why. I think the mystery and just saying, just believing that this was possibly done in one take and this was more of a solo, I think that just works better for me. He was just feeling this at the moment, and these are the emotions he wanted to get out. I like I said, I don't know if that's true, but I like that story, and I kind of ignorance is bliss in this case. It just it moves through a range of emotions, and it's really interesting to listen to how he phrases that line, that entire line, that 30 seconds of drumming or whatever. Just I really love that. Oh, before we go, speaking of drumming, so there's a bit of marching drumming in here, which is all snare, and I don't know how to describe marching drumming. It's something that I know when I hear it, but I don't necessarily have a definition of it. Uh, it's specific rhythms done on a snare drum that to me feel marchy. I wish I could explain that better, and maybe I should probably go see if somebody's put a definition to it. But or not a definition. I guess it would be a definition the same way a genre is a definition, like guidelines of how to write marching snares. Um, but I like that element because marching, at least to me, tends to be associated with um, military, government, and you know, all as one, kind of taking a whole and viewing them as a single entity, and this idea of falling in line. And I think that works well within the idea of the church. I mean, the church has rank in it. We have the Pope and we have the people under him, and those people have people under them. And it could be seen as sorts, in sort of a governmental or militaristic view. I'm not saying that they are a government or are a military, but I think they could be seen in that view, the Catholic Church. In which case, we also have people on the top covering for people on the bottom and stuff like that, especially when news breaks of some transgressions within the church. And I don't know if this is intentional. I could be reading into it, but I really love how they put that marching element in there and kind of brought these ideas to my mind while I was listening to it. Um, yeah, I think that covers it. And also just in awe of the soundscapes they created. Some of those atmospheres were wild. And it's not so much what they're playing at the point, it's more of the emotions that are being drawn out by the combinations of notes and their relationships with each other. Some of them being hyper tense, some of them being a bit more palatable, and the just hyper concentrated and extremely complex emotions. I don't really have a name for much of it. It's feelings that I felt that I don't have names for, like sadness and anger and fear and uh, anxiety, all kind of being tied up into one. uh, it's really interesting to see them color and create these musical paintings, these atmospheres that I can feel. Just phenomenal work there. Yeah, I think that's it now. Thinking. This is incredibly dense, and I quite enjoyed a lot of it, both on a technical and an artistic level. But I think that's it. Those are my thoughts on J.G. Thirlwell's and Simon Steensland, Catholic Deceit. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know your thoughts on this. Let me know if you think I'm on the mark or if I was just way off on this. I feel pretty confident in my analysis today, but I could be way off the mark, especially if either of these composers have weighed in on the topic, on their song, and maybe this was not anything like what I concluded. It could happen. It could happen. I'm just a listener, listening to music, telling you what my brain says. Any other comments if you enjoyed this or not? Anything that stuck out to you that you've thought it was odd, maybe I didn't pick up on, but it definitely was something you wanted to bring to my attention, go ahead, drop those comments down there. Above the comment section is a description box, and there is a link for Linktree. It's a fantastic resource. It takes you to everything related to the channel. You can access my Twitter from there, access the Patreon from there if you want to help support the channel. You can access the Discord link so you can join the Discord community. Just a ton of stuff there. Go check it out. Above the description box, like, subscribe, ring the bell. All three things help out the channel immensely. We got one more video. No, today, this is the second video. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So, I was making like fart sounds with my hand. I've never been able to do that before. I was distracted a little. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC with some more stuff. We'll be checking out more math rock and another special selection. All right, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.